All right, students, welcome. If you're taking the SAT tomorrow, you are in the right spot. We are here to walk you guys through the pep talk day before SAT advice and to answer any final questions. I just posted the video for the 5 essential items to have ready the night before the SAT. I highly encourage all of you guys to watch that video. That video is it's like 2 or 3 minutes. It tells you everything that you need to have ready to go the night before. The reason that that's important is because we're going to talk a lot today about stress and anxiety and trying to reduce those in every way that we can by controlling what we can control. So before we get started with that, and controlling what we can control, right, involves having everything ready to go the night before so we're not stressed in the morning. Before we get started with that though, guys, can everybody give me a thumbs up or a hello in the chat section so that I know who's here and am ready to address you guys and answer any questions? Otherwise, I just posted that 5 essential items, and I'll post a few more helpful resources as we go through the live stream today. Okay, but if you guys have any preliminary questions about what to do the night before, what to do the morning of, we're going to talk about those. Feel free to post those in the chat as well. But otherwise, just say hello, and we'll get started here in just a second. Okay. Waleed, welcome. Welcome. Guys, if this is the first time that you're joining us, I'm Chase, and I will be leading us through this little chat today, this live stream. Hopefully everybody gains a lot from it, and more importantly, hopefully everybody goes in tomorrow with some confidence, knowing that this test doesn't have to be the end of the world. So again, we'll give everybody maybe a minute or two more to log in. And if you guys haven't said hello yet in the chat, just give me a hello or a thumbs up so I know who's here and can address you guys or ask you guys questions as we go through this. And then we'll get started here in about 1 to 2 minutes. While we're waiting, like I said, if you guys want to check out that 5 essential items that have ready to go the night before, that's that video I just posted. I encourage you to do that. And again, more important than anything is that you don't have anxiety tomorrow. I guess we can kind of start there. If you have anxiety tomorrow morning because you don't have everything ready to go, you don't have your printed out ticket, right? Your SAT ticket that you have to have printed out with your photo ID. If you are looking or scrambling for all those things tomorrow morning, your printer suddenly runs out of ink. That is going to do exactly the opposite of what we want to do. For those that watched our comprehensive review last night, you guys will know that my big thing with this is that this test is 50% psychological, 50% focus-based. Right? And the other 50% is the content. So you can argue about the content all you want, but whether or not that's applicable for college, all that kind of stuff, I don't know. Fortunately, I'm not the person that has to make that decision because I could see any argument that says the content is not what it should be. But that's not really the reason that colleges still want you to be able to take this test. The reason colleges want you to take this test is because when you get to college, if you want to go to Harvard, and I only use Harvard or Stanford as an example because they're the best colleges in the world, some of the best colleges in the world. If you want to go to Harvard, you're going to be with a whole bunch of really intense, competitive people while you're at Harvard. And guess what? You're going to have to take finals that are 3 to 4 hours long. And if Harvard, the last thing that they want to do, even worse than having to deny you admission at the beginning, would be having to kick you out because you're failing your classes. And they can't have that. That's not a good reputation for Harvard or Stanford or any of these schools. So they need to make sure that you're able to take that test in that really competitive environment. And that's why these tests still matter to colleges. I can't imagine that Harvard's looking at this being like, I really hope this person knows a lot about punctuation. I really hope this person knows a lot about basic algebra. No, they're looking to see who's the person that's going to stay focused and determined all the way through a 3.5 hour test because that's hard to do. That's way harder to do than to memorize some punctuation rules. And that's why all of these colleges still consider it to be so important. On top of that, I like making these live streams and talking about this test. I am not, you can argue about the content all you want, but what you can't argue about is that you're going to be in stressful situations in your life at some point. And it's the person that has the positive attitude that pushes through that has that ability to say, you know what, this stinks. I don't want to be here right now, but I know I have to be here because it's going to make a difference in my life. So I'm going to do everything in my power to stay as focused as possible right now because I know it will make a difference, right? The ends justify the means, I think is the way to say it. And so you stay focused, you put your head down, you do everything in your power to not let one question right, get away from you, or not to just give up in the middle of the test just because you're tired of being there. There's going to be that moment. I use the example of MIT is another one, right? If you go to MIT and then you work on, let's say, the space shuttle, right? If you're an aeronautical engineer and your job is to put the heat shield, right, like the heat shield when the space shuttle comes back to Earth, and you have to put the heat shield on the space shuttle. That's a very stressful job. Imagine if you're like 1 inch off, the whole thing goes, right? It's catastrophic. And so that's why at MIT it's so competitive, it's so focused, because those jobs after going to MIT are going to be very, very hyper focused, because you might be building the next rocket to Mars. I don't know. But the point is that's a stressful job, and they need to make sure that you can handle that stress, that you stay positive, that you stay pushing forward rather than just giving up because it is stressful. And that's what's the importance of this test, or any standardized test you take, an AP exam, same thing, is that you're able to put your head down and you're able to stay focused all the way through. Okay, that will make a massive, massive difference, I promise. So can everybody give me a thumbs up on that note? Thumbs up in the chat if that works. Hey, Allison, welcome. Welcome to the chat. Welcome to the live stream. Okay, everything that I just mentioned is so, so important. Sabir, welcome. It will define the test for many of you guys. It will define the test for everybody tomorrow. Because again, the content of this exam is, some of the content is so easy. Like basic algebra, even if you're a bad math student, is just so easy. Solving for x is not something that I don't think any of you guys struggle with. And so if you guys know, right, if you guys know that that's not that hard of content, there must be something else that they're trying to get across. There must be some reason that Harvard, the best university in the, right, one of the best universities in the world, with some of the smartest people in the world, not only at the student level, but at the administrative level as well, the president of Harvard, right? The economics professors, all these people are so smart. There must be a reason that they still consider this test very important when you go to, and that's true for everything, right? The state of Colorado just announced that the SAT is the mandatory graduation requirement. There's a lot of really smart people who have put a lot into these exams, and it has nothing to do with the content. It has everything to do with your ability to stay focused and your ability to stay positive, to keep pushing through. And that's what I want you guys to take away from this, okay? And that leads me right into this next little segment. We talked about this last night, but it's even more important the day before the test. Allison, no problem on the videos. I'm glad that you're liking them. I'm glad you're following along. Hopefully they continue to help you raise your score, but most importantly, hopefully they continue to help you stay motivated. Because Allison, I'm such a big believer in knowing, and I know this because I know that there's people that do this for a living that are way smarter than I am, right? That there are smarter people than I am at this for sure. But the biggest advantage that I had when I was a kid was I tried to stay positive always. I was very positive. I still try to be as much as I can. And then I was very relaxed. And that's a very nice way of saying I was very lazy. I was a horrible high school student because I was super lazy, didn't get the work done that I needed to get done. But I was interested and I was positive. And so on a test like this, it allows you to continue to do well even if you don't know every question. So let me give you guys an example. Okay, for those that were a part of the live stream last night, we are looking at the scoring for test SAT. Whoops, that's not how you spell scoring. Scoring for SAT test 11. Come on, Chase. Okay, scoring SAT test 7. And again, what I want you guys to see is that while I was very lazy as a kid, I was pretty honest with myself in terms of knowing that I would try to make excuses, but the excuses I knew were coming from the fact that I just didn't do the work. Okay, and so I was pretty honest with myself about that. And so I was honest with the idea that it takes a lot of really hard work to get a 1600 on the SAT. Like unbelievably hard work. Because no amount of being a great natural test taker will help you in any way get a 1600, because there are some really hard questions on this exam that you just have to study and focus and be ready to go for those. Okay, so if that's the case, I was honest with myself that I was too lazy to accomplish that. Okay, but to get a 1500, let's say, on the SAT, that didn't take the same type of determination to know the last 10 hardest concepts. To get a 1500, you could miss still 10 questions, right? Like, let's say we're trying to get a 1500. Well, I can miss, let's say, approximately 4 questions on math, right? Give or take, right? Let's just say -4 on math. And I knew that I could miss 350, right? I have to get a 370 or so. I knew that I could miss, 4 questions on reading and another Probably 2 questions. Yeah, somewhere in between 1 and 2 questions on writing and language. So that's a total of like 10 questions on the whole test, right? You can miss 10 questions, and going in with that knowledge, I was like, man, this is great. If I just eliminate the hardest 10 questions from this exam, you can get a 1500 on this test, which is in the top. Okay, that's a 1500 is in the top. I don't know, 1% of all students that take this exam. And all that it takes, all the requirement that it takes is for you to skip the 10 hardest questions. Imagine if I were to give you that opportunity in school. Like in a school final, if I were to tell you, okay, Chase, today you're going to skip the 10 hardest questions and I'll give you an A. In fact, not only will I give you an A, I'll give you a 99%. Here's 150 questions. I know these are going to be hard, but you've studied for it. And I'm going to let you skip the 10 hardest questions on the test and I'm still going to give you a 99. That's exactly what the SAT is saying. If you understand the scales of the SAT is telling you that you can skip the 10 hardest questions throughout the exam and you can still get in the 99th percentile on this test. That's crazy, but it's true. It's 100% true. That is 1500 is in the top 1% of all students that take the SAT, and that gives you the buffer to miss 10 questions somewhere throughout the test, right? It gives you the opportunity to miss a lot of questions and still do exceptionally well. If you get a 1400, you're in the top 4%, 5% of all students, 4 or 5% of all students. If you get a 1400, that you can go into the test if your goal is to get a 1400, you can go in thinking, hey, I can miss a certain number of questions. So going back to what we talked about last night, okay, for the comprehensive review, if you guys are worried or feeling overwhelmed about this exam, I don't want you to go in tomorrow thinking, if I don't get this score, then I'm a failure. Because if you go in like that, you're already defeating the purpose of the test. You're already being defeated. Instead, go into the test thinking, this is how many questions I want to answer correctly on this section. I've taken practice tests of the reading section enough that I think on the reading section out of 52 questions, I think I'm very capable. I think I'm very capable of getting 40 out of 52, right? I can miss 12 questions. So if I come across 12 difficult questions, I'm not going to worry about those. I'm not going to let those questions get me down. Like, oh no, I'm missing another one. I have to skip 3 in a row. Well, if you have to skip 3 in a row, you have 9 more that you could skip. You could skip 12 in a row, a full passage if it means that you stay focused on the other 40 questions. And you'd still end up with a 320, right? This is 320 on the reading section. That's missing 12 questions on reading, right? If we combine that with a strong writing and language score, let's say a 340, right, where we miss 7 writing and language score, minus 7 here, right? If you miss 7 questions, all of a sudden you're still at a 660 on this test, a 660 on the writing and language and reading sections. So again, I want you to take that. I want you to think in terms of number of questions answered. So it's my recommendation that tonight, you guys take a look at your last 1 or 2 practice tests for each section. Okay, and preferably the more if you've taken 3, let's say, in the last month, that's a pretty good representation of how kind of you're doing over the last month. Take those 3 tests, figure out what the average number of questions you answered correctly on each of the sections is, and then shoot for that number. Okay, so if it's on the math test, right? If between the 2 math sections there's 58 questions, right? There's 20 on the no calc section. There's 20 on the no calc section and there's 38 on the calc section, right? Between those 2 sections, if you take your last 3 practice exams and you average those 3 math scores together and you find that you've answered about 45 questions right on average between the last 3 times you've taken a math test, 45 out of 58, then tomorrow, rather than going in with the mindset that, oh, if I don't get this score, I'm a failure, then no, you should go in with the mindset that I'm going to get 45 questions right. I don't care what it takes. I'm going to find 45 questions that I know how to do, and I'm just going to ignore the other 13. I don't care about those. I'm going to ignore those 13 because I know that I can hit this goal. And guess what? If you go do that, because I think most of you guys are juniors right now, there's probably a couple seniors that are taking it for the last time, but I think the October and November tests were what I felt like were the last tests that seniors are taking. Maybe that's wrong. If you're a senior taking it tomorrow, then that's totally fine. You just have to hit your goal score. But if you're a junior and you hit your goal, even if it's not where you want to be in the end of this, it feels great to hit your goal. If you go in tomorrow and be like, you know what, the average of my last couple tests has been 45, and I feel pretty good about those tests, I'm going to try to hit 45 out of 58 questions. Boom, that's a 650 on the math section. Okay? Okay, so again, guys, as you guys are moving into this, okay, if you guys are moving into this tomorrow and tonight even, I don't want you to think about your score. I don't want you to be nervous about if I don't get this score that I'm a failure, because that is the worst mindset you can go in with. The best mindset you can go in with is to think about what you're doing on the test, not how you're doing. And what I mean by that is if you look at the next question, you're thinking about what you're doing. It's like, oh my God, there's a pre-algebra question, right? I can do this one. I'm thinking about what I'm doing. If you skip 3 questions in a row and you start to freak out, that's thinking about how you're doing. Oh my God, I skipped 3. I'm not going to get the score I want. That's how am I doing, not what am I doing. Instead, if I skip 3 questions in a row, you got to think to yourself, okay, those 3 questions were hard, so let me go find an easy one to get back on track. That's what am I doing? What am I doing to correct these 3 in a row that I skipped? Not how am I doing? Oh my God, I skipped 3 questions. I'm a failure. No, think about be present for this test tomorrow, and that will make such a huge, huge difference. Okay? Guys, if you're taking it as a senior tomorrow, that gives you even more opportunity because you can be pretty relaxed as a senior, right? You guys know what this test is. Allison, right? You guys can figure this out. You've seen this test before. Go in, that nothing changes. Okay? Nothing changes with regards to the mindset that you take in tomorrow. If you're a junior, you just know that maybe you're at the beginning of this process and that you're trying to hit a goal score down the road. So maybe that's not where you're at tomorrow, but you're down the road. If you're a senior, you've been doing this probably for a while or looked at these tests a little bit. Most of you guys, it sounds like, Allison, you were watching videos of our other videos before this. That probably means that you've thought about the SAT before this, so you're just ahead of the curve, right? You're shooting for a score that might be your peak score tomorrow, and that's what we want. But that goes in with a mindset still of 50 out of 58 on the math section. What do I need to get that number? And then guess what, guys? The best part about this mindset, I was such a bad student, but because I was so lazy, this was the mindset that I always took in. I took this into everything. Okay, I knew that in order to not get grounded for the weekend, I had to keep a B- in a class, right? So I would do everything in my power to find the minimum score that I needed to get on the final to keep that B-, and that's what I was going for. I was never shooting to get 100. I hate that now. I shouldn't have been lazy like that. So if you can combine your work ethic, you can become a better test taker. Work ethic is keep pushing yourself. If you're sitting there being like, man, I've worked so hard and I just don't feel it right now. I just don't feel great. I've worked so hard for something. It doesn't even have to be the SAT. In fact, don't make it about the SAT. I don't think many 16, 17, 18-year-olds are sitting there waking up every morning being like, boy, I can't wait to do the SAT today. Maybe some of you are. Right, but most of us are not thinking that way, and you definitely won't be thinking about that as soon as you're done with this whole process. I guarantee it. Okay, so if that's the case, think about things that you've worked hard towards that just aren't showing the results yet. Because I would give anything to give up being a good test taker. That means very little in the grand scheme of things. And by the way, that can be you can work on that too, than to have a great work ethic. Because that doesn't come along very often, particularly when you're young, 16, 17, 18 years old. If you already have that, you are infinitely ahead of the curve. Okay? So keep thinking about that and find the number of questions that you want to answer correctly. Find the number of questions for tomorrow that you want to answer correctly, and that will make a huge, huge difference in terms of your mindset going into the test. Okay? Because instead of going in thinking I got to get this score, you'll go in thinking I got to get 45 questions right on the math section, which means that I can skip 13 questions, just completely skip them. And guess what? If those are the 13 questions that I'm skipping that I was already going to think that those were hard, I'm probably saving myself 20 extra minutes between the 2 math sections to apply to make sure that I'm 100% accurate on those other 45. That's a pretty good feeling, right? And then if I get those 45 right, I'm at a 650 on the math section. That's in the top 10% of all students that take the math test. Right? That's a great feeling. But it has nothing to do with, if you saw that, what I just did there, the 650 came at the end. The score came at the end, right? Everything I just said, I wrote everything out, and I didn't even think about the score until the very last thing I wrote down, because the only thing you should be thinking about is how do I find 45 questions on the math tests, the 2 combined that I need to do, so I know I can get those ones right. And I promise that mindset will make a huge difference tomorrow. I promise. Or if it's not tomorrow, whenever you are taking the SAT exam. All right? Can everybody give me a thumbs up if that makes sense? Thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, everybody good with that? Great. Thanks, guys. That's perfect. Yeah, absolutely, Allison. So I definitely do. If you guys ever want to watch some of our videos, I absolutely think that you should skip. And that's not because one of the things that for those that have watched our videos and for those that have watched them extensively in the past, that's not me just saying that. One of the things that used to bug me, so it just drove me crazy, and I said this last time in the comprehensive review too, is it drives me crazy to think that there's one way to take this test. I have done this every day for the last 8 years, so I have unfortunately, a pretty good understanding of what this test is and how to do really well on it. But that doesn't mean that the way that I say it is exactly the way that you should do it. Being an independent thinker is what allowed me to do well in these exams. And it's going to allow you to do well too, because I don't know I don't know what your mindset is. I don't know what you're feeling at that moment. Only you do, and that's true for everybody here. You don't know what I'm feeling in that moment. So if the reading thing, if you get overwhelmed and anxious by reading the entire reading passages, then don't do that. Or in the especially if you haven't practiced it, or practice. I still think that's the best strategy. But if you're not feeling that way now, it's going to take some practice to get to that strategy. But in the meantime, don't do anything just because I say so or somebody else tells you so. Because I used to go, it drives me crazy when teachers act like there's no other way. I don't know. I don't know what you guys are thinking or where you are in the moment. I have no idea. So it drives me crazy to think that there's only one way to do something. So when we talk about these strategies, and sorry to go off on a tangent here a little bit, Allison, but when we talk about these strategies, I try to make it as objective as possible. Things that I know to be true about the test. And one of the things, to answer your question about the math section and skipping around, if you find the easy questions first, if you take this, right, out of order, there are going to be questions that are leveled according to the SAT that are supposed to be really hard, but maybe you just did them in school, right? Maybe it's a graph, right? For whatever reason, you just did line of best fit in school. That all of a sudden is way easier than the SAT thought it was going to be for you and you alone, or whoever, right? So when you skip around and your goal is to find 45 questions wherever they are, 45 questions that you know how to do, then all of a sudden that's not nearly as overwhelming as looking at. So here's what we've seen from students a lot is, let's say question number 3, right? 1, 2, 3. We think about the math section, and everybody always tells you it's in order of difficulty. That's only partially true. As a section of 10, 1 through 10 is easier probably than 11 through 20. But that doesn't mean that every question in 1 through 10 is easier than every question in 11 through 20. So if looking at number 3, let's say this is a really this is a word problem, right? This is a really long word problem, and you just got done reading for 65 minutes, and then you did writing and language for another 35 minutes, and now you have to jump in, and question number 3 is a word problem. And you have to read that word problem, understand it, not make a simple mistake, when number 4 was just a basic algebra problem that just said, whatever, 4r minus 6s equals 10, what is the, right, whatever the basic algebra problem is, that's suddenly so much easier than trying to make it, than trying to do it in order. And again, when you know, there's zero reason to challenge yourself. Okay? There is zero reason to challenge yourself on this test. That's what allowed me to do well on these exams, is I never challenged myself because I understood that no one question is worth more than another. So while the student who was probably smarter than I was, but way more intense and stressed than I was, that was sitting next to me was really worried about getting every question right, I knew, like, oh, I don't know that one. That one looks too hard, right? So I'll just be lazy and not do it. But I know how to do a lot of these. I lucked out. My mom's a math teacher, so I lucked out in a lot of ways. So I was a pretty good math student because she made me be a good math student, not because I was doing these drills on my own, right? And I knew what I knew. And I looked for 54 problems out of 58, and I never challenged myself on the other 4 because I knew for me personally that didn't matter. If you're trying to get a 1600, that's the only time that every question matters. Right? That's the only situation where every question matters. If you're trying to get a 1590, you could miss a question. If you're trying to get a 1590, you can miss 2 questions, actually, on the reading test, right? The point I'm trying to make here is that finding the questions that you know how to do and setting a goal for number of questions answered takes away all of the mindset of the score. Instead, you're thinking, what do I need to do in order to get this number of questions right? Let me go find those questions. And if I come across a difficult word problem, or if I'm just not feeling it, I'm really in the mind and I'm like, I don't know what they just said there. I don't feel good about that question. Move on. Maybe if you come back to it, it'll be easier the next time, or maybe it won't be, but in that moment, it's definitely not easy, and that means that we have to move on from it. Does that all make sense, guys? Again, this is all just me mathematically looking at this test and saying that every question is worth the same amount of points. How you get there based on your own strategy is a different story, right? And I'm totally fine, especially if you've practiced and you found one that works for you. That's the work ethic I'm talking about. That's great. Use that strategy. You don't have to listen to me on everything. Okay? But if you take that strategy and you mold it to your own strategy, and you take what I'm saying and you mold it to your own strategy, there's just no way you do poorly on this exam because of the way that it's scored, because of the way that the scaling works. You're already at an advantage just starting the test, just being there, right? Look at this, guys. I kid you not. If you don't answer a single question right, you get a 400. So you have a 400-point starting buffer, right? It's not me just saying this. This is true of the scale. You get a 400 points for doing nothing. So that's where we have to take advantage. We have to understand the scale to make sure that we are approaching this exam in the most beneficial way for us as we possibly can. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Any other questions on that? Any other questions on the scale? And if not, can you guys say good to go? I'm going to talk a little bit about what you should do tonight and what you should do. Say good to go in the chat, just about what you should do tonight and what you should do tomorrow morning to best be ready for this. Mystical, it depends on your mindset going into the test. I know that seems ridiculous, but the nice thing about taking the test in the real environment, if you can choose not to get anxious and not to be stressed about it, you're going to be more focused. There's no question about that because you'll know it's real and you won't have the distractions of like if your brother is yelling outside the room that you're trying to take a practice test in, right, or your sister or whatever's going on outside of the room, that's not going to exist for the most part when you take the real test. You can have a bad proctor in certain crazy situations that certainly happen, but for the most part, the vast majority of students are going to get a really controlled and focused environment. So if you can stay focused and not stressed, it's a really easy way to find 50 extra points on the test simply because you're not looking out the window or distracted by something that won't be there on real test day. It's a good question, though. That's generally why people score higher if they do score higher on the test, on the real one. So again, it's all about mindset. That positivity to stay focused will allow you, you're already going to get some advantages from the real environment that go along with this idea of focus. Okay? So guys, in terms of what I want you guys to do tonight and tomorrow, my recommendation for tonight is there are certain students, I was never the type, but I was to a fault never the type that would want to do more work. And that was a huge issue, okay? That was a huge issue in my life. That's an unbelievable way to put it. Avalyn, that's an unbelievable way to put it. It's quality over quantity. In every school test, just one last thing because that was such a great comment. If you guys see that comment, quality over quantity. In school, when we skip a question, our first thought is, oh my God, I'm failing this, right? I skipped that question because I didn't know how to do it. The idea of the 3-pass method that we talked about last night on the comprehensive review is to say, I'm skipping for a purpose. I'm moving on from this question so I can find questions that are easier yet worth the same value. Yeah, that's the quality part. The quantity doesn't matter. The point of finishing the test is you don't gain anything from that. There's no if you're going to make simple mistakes because you're rushing through questions that you absolutely know to get to questions that you're a 50-50 on, that's the wrong approach. Instead, let's take away those 13 questions that we don't know how to do to guarantee that we get those 45 questions right. It's a great way of saying it. Quality over quantity. Quality. The quality is getting 100% accuracy on the questions we do know how to do and not making simple mistakes because that's so consistent. That's a guaranteed certain score. When you make simple mistakes, I have no idea how you're going to do. Right? If you're rushing through the test, missing questions that you should be getting right, if you look at your old test and you sit there and you're like, oh my God, I could have gotten that question right. Why did I make that decision? That's because you're worried about other questions on the test that you don't need to be worried about. And that's where understanding the scales and understanding what your goal number of questions answered correctly tomorrow on each section, that's where it becomes so important. Okay, so a couple things regarding tonight. Some students feel anxiety if they don't do practice questions. So if you are that student where if you just sat there for tonight and you would feel more anxiety than if you didn't, right? Than if you didn't sit there and instead you did more practice, then do more practice. For the most part, if you're going to do more practice, I encourage you to only focus on the writing and language test. Okay, only focus on writing and language, or if you're a really strong math student, you can focus on math, no calculator. Those are the absolute only two sections. Those are the only two sections that I would look at, because these two sections are 100% rules-based sections. Rules-based. Okay? The reading section is not rules-based. Don't sit there toiling over the reading section because you have no idea what that's going to look like tomorrow. You don't know what the passages are going to look like or the order of the questions or anything. So don't psych yourself out. You want to practice for the reading section, but not the night before, because that's just going to get you in the wrong mindset. Do something that you're really good at. And generally speaking, that's either the writing and language test for a lot of students, or it's the math no calculator test if you're a particularly good math student. So focus on those two if you do feel the need to do practice problems tonight. Okay, focus on those two. Any questions on that? Any questions on what to do the night before? Don't go to bed at an unreasonable hour, either late or early. Right? So everybody talks about don't go to bed too late tonight if you're taking the test tomorrow morning. That's true, but don't go to bed too early either. Don't let your parents convince you that you need to go to bed at 8 p.m. or don't convince yourself of that, because that's going to throw you off. There is a reason that the SAT administers this test on a Saturday at 8 a.m. What time do most of us start school? Every weekday, 8 a.m. or around 8 a.m., right? And so if they start the test on Saturday to simulate your school life. So if you typically go to bed at 2 a.m. on a school night, there's another thing to talk about. So that's another thing. Don't go to bed at 2 a.m. Don't go to bed too late. But then if you go to bed at 2 a.m. typically or midnight, don't suddenly go to bed at 8 p.m. because you're just going to be sitting there tossing, thinking about the test. No, go to bed a little bit earlier. Maybe if you go to bed at midnight, typically go to bed at 11. Right? Go to bed, get a little bit more sleep than you typically would so you're refreshed a little bit, but that you're not groggy and your whole system's not thrown off tonight. Okay? Does that all make sense? Any questions for the night before? Any questions related to the night before? Math no calc is still test number 8. Trying to think which one would be best for writing. I can't think of a good writing language test. Test 7 is a good reading test. Test 7 is a hard reading test, I should say. This is just a normal level writing language. Like I said, test 7 last night. Test 7 it's a hard reading test. A little bit easier on the math section for test 7, but overall is a really middle of the road scale. That's why we use it in these videos. Yash, welcome, guys. Yeah, guys, anybody that's trying to... so anyway, test 8 is a good one for math, no calc. And writing and language, I got to think about that one. I can't think of any off the top of my head. Questions about going from a 700 plus on the... I think it was on the... You're talking about the English, right? The writing and language section? If you're looking for those sections, focus on writing and language. Writing and language has a million different, 30 out of 44 questions. If you guys watched the comprehensive review from last night, in fact, let me post that. Midway through the comprehensive review, we started talking about, let me see if I can find it. Midway through this video, this live stream, as we recorded, it's on the channel, we talked about the most important writing and language grammatical concepts to cover, namely punctuation. Punctuation, guys, shows up 8 out of 44 questions, if you can believe that. 8 out of 44 of these questions on the writing and language test, that's almost 20% of the writing and language test is equal to punctuation, directly related to punctuation rules. 20% of this test. So again, if you're going to focus on anything tonight, if you're a good math student, then no calc makes sense. But if you feel like writing in language or you want to improve your reading, writing in language, memorize, drill those punctuation rules till you can't drill them anymore, because those will come up. And if you watch that video of the comprehensive review, you guys will see, you'll see a lot of that. Does that make sense? Keithan, does that make sense? So I would watch that. It's like midway through, maybe like right at the first hour, right at the hour mark, you'll see that. And if, let's say, if you look on the test, here's another thing. Keithan, here's another one. If you guys have taken practice tests, that's super important. We have these advanced score reports, okay? And these advanced score reports that are particularly useful for the writing and language and the math sections correspond directly to our free Star U app and the content within those. So let me just show you guys this real quick. So Keithan or anybody else that's looking to improve their, specifically the last 3 sections of the SAT, this is so helpful. SAT Advanced Score Reports. Okay. If you guys take an SAT exam and you plug it in, you're plugging your answers into the Your Answer column, the score report will grade the test for you. But more importantly, it will grade it and then tell you exactly which question types you're missing. Okay? So if you know that, then you can come to the app, all of the question types in the columns on those advanced score reports, if you click that link I just posted, all of the columns on those advanced score reports correspond directly to questions that are within the Star U app. The Star U app is free to download. I encourage everybody to do it. We talked about it last night. You guys can come over here to SAT Writing and Language, and if you are missing punctuation questions, then go read the punctuation chapter here, right? All of our teachers and tutors write and edit these thick tutorials after every SAT, official SAT is released, right? Our students take the test, we get the official March 2020 test or whatever, and then we edit these books. And it's all available in the app, and it all corresponds directly, okay? It also corresponds directly to those advanced score reports. So if you plug in your answers and you see which question types you're missing, it's a really easy and really efficient way to improve. It's all free. So again, this is where that hard work comes in. This is where I don't really feel bad anymore at any point, because it's all there for you, right? And these live streams basically tell you what to do to improve, and all you have to do is just do it, right? If you take a practice test, just take the 5 minutes to plug it into the score report and then see what question types you're missing, and then go study those question types. If you want to do it on the app or Khan Academy, whatever, if you want to do it on Star U, those are free examples of things that you can continue to improve. And it's so true for the SAT, because the last 3 sections, the middle 2 sections, really, writing and language and math, no calc, are 100% rules-based questions, right? And then the final one, math with a calculator, is still primarily rules-based, right? If I know algebra, I'll know how to do it. If I know line of best fit, I'll know how to do this question. If I know linear equations, I'll know how to do this question. And so again, it's just there for the taking if you guys are willing to put in the time. Is that cool? Any questions on that stuff, guys? Any questions at all? Any other questions, guys? Okay, before I talk finally about, I'm going to post one more thing, guys. Related to, I posted this at the beginning. Yeah, so Mystical, that's exactly right. If you guys see the comments there from Mystical, that's exactly right. And that is so true. The reading section is Mystical, that's the only one that I probably wouldn't totally agree on, but to a certain extent, you're right. I mean, the question types are going to be the same, but you're 1,000% right on the writing and language and the 2 math sections. If you just take practice tests and you figure out what you're missing, you will do better. These score reports, what we originally designed them for and designed it for our students, was so that you can be really efficient with that practice. Right? The score reports are going to tell you what you scored, which you can obviously do by just looking at the scoring for the SAT. But more specifically, it's going to tell you the exact question types you're missing. So if you find yourself missing a lot of pronouns questions, or you find yourself missing a lot of linear equations questions, right? You can come to the app, right? You can come to Star U, click SAT Math, and if you're struggling with whatever, functions or systems of equations are so common on the SAT Math section, right? Where you have two equations stacked on top of each other, so common on the SAT Math. So just come to the app if you see you're missing those on the score report and plug those in. And plug in your answers and then study using all of these, right? You have all of the content here. And then if you want to do practice questions, you guys can do more practice questions. Again, it's just an efficient way to study. But ultimately, if you just take more and more practice tests and see more questions, you're just going to get better. You can do it efficiently and not have to, right, keep taking them so many of them. But hey, you're gonna do well either way. Okay, does that make sense, guys? Oh yeah, and the last thing that I wanted to show you guys. Oops, no, we're on it. Last thing I wanted to show you guys was tonight, before you guys go to the test, here are the essential items that you should have ready to go the night before the exam. I posted these originally, but 5 essential items to have ready. Okay, and again, for everybody that's been in here, you guys know that my big thing is controlling what we can control. If you don't have anxiety, if you don't have stress, that was my biggest advantage taking these as a kid. I was never stressed about anything, which equated to laziness in school and everything I did. But when you don't have stress on a test like this, your mind is clear to think about what you're doing. Right? I was competitive. It wasn't just sitting there doing nothing. So I was competitive. I wanted to beat the student next to me, but I knew what I was capable of. I was very honest with myself in that way that, hey, I didn't do enough work to do this. So, I'll make an excuse for that afterwards so that my parents don't ground me. But for right now, I know I can't do this question in the moment. So why am I spending time on it at all? Let me go on to 2 questions that I do know how to do because those are worth the same amount of points. Right? 2 questions that I know how to do versus one where I'm just sitting there getting frustrated when I don't know how to do it to begin with. I don't really know what I'm supposed to be doing to start. Okay, so with that in mind, limiting that stress is so important. So if you watch that video, that talks about the 5 things that you should have ready the night before you go to the SAT exam. And if you do that, if you watch that video and you get those things ready to go, then tomorrow morning when you wake up, you've gotten your night's sleep, you eat whatever, you do whatever that you typically do when you get ready for school, and you don't have to think about anything. Everything's just in a stack, ready to go. You walk out the door, you drive to your test center, and it's just normal. Okay, and that's what those little things can make a huge difference, particularly for those that have been asking how I improved from like a 1400 to a 1600. If you're in that already in that very, very high scoring range, you got to find the ways to do the little things. Okay, so not getting stressed is a big one because you're gonna need that. If you're already scoring really highly, 700 plus on either of these 2 sections, you need every little bit because you're already doing so well. You're now competing against the top 1 to 2 to 3% of all students taking this exam. So you got to find little ways to improve, to beat the kid sitting next to you who's also really smart, but you did something that they didn't do, which helped you go up 20 points when they didn't do it, and so they didn't go up. Writing questions, guys, I would skip very quickly, only because they are rules-based questions. If you don't know how to do a writing question, you're not going to really learn how to do that. Like a punctuation question, if you don't know how to you don't know why commas are in certain places, because remember, there is a rule for every writing and language grammar question. There are 30 writing and language grammar questions out of 44 on every test. There's a rule just like there is for math questions. Yet on those ones, it's very easy to identify. If I don't know why certain commas are showing up at certain answer choices, then I really don't know that rule. And that's okay. But I don't want to spend time trying to decide which is the rule when I'm already going to end up taking kind of a guess anyway at the end under the best circumstances. Yeah, so guys, if you had your test canceled, Waleed, I'll answer that question about reading because it's a good one. Baran, if you had your test canceled for the SAT, there's unfortunately these are kind of the times. One of the things that I would do is I would if you can log into your college board account tonight, which is it's a long shot, but if you can get on a waiting list or if you can show up standby. Sometimes if you show up at a testing center, they'll have spots open for students that just didn't come that day. That's two options. Okay, but if there's no regional test around you, there's no option, then unfortunately it's just a sign of it's just the times. And we got to do everything in our power. What I would do is rather than getting down about that, especially if you're a junior still, rather than getting down about that and not being able to take it tomorrow, knowing that you take it in March, I'd be positive and say, you know what, instead of, I'm not going to get an official score tomorrow, but I'm going to sit here and I'm going to take a practice test as if it was the real thing to try to get myself in the right mindset as if I was taking it. And yes, I'm not going to get a score. And yes, that's a downer, but that doesn't mean that we have to make it the worst thing in the world. And so take a practice test tomorrow if nothing else works out, and then get ready to go for March. Waleed, on your question, what should I do if I'm running out of time on the reading section? Stay focused. It depends on how much time you have left, but let's say you have 5 minutes left, and you haven't started the last passage, right? Instead of getting worried about that, find 1 to 2 questions on the last passage, right? Don't read it. Don't go with your normal strategy. Find 1 to 2 questions that you know how to do, and then do those questions, and then find your guessing letter and guess that same letter all the way down. Yeah. Is that cool? Any questions on that, guys? Find that guessing letter, but stay relaxed, right? You're not going to, if you have 5 minutes left going into the last passage of the reading section, realistically, you're not going to get every question right. So to the point of quality over quantity, don't try to get every question right. Find 2 questions that you can do, right? In this phrase, this word most nearly means, right? Yeah, so if you find that question, go do that question and get 2 questions right, and then find your guessing letter. Yeah, so Bron, if you have to take a plane to get where you need to be, then and your test is canceled, then and if you've already taken that plane, if you're already in the location you're going to take the test, then I would still recommend the standby. See if you can log into College Board and find a location that would be on standby for students that don't show up. If you've already gone to the location that you're going to take it, if you've already been on the plane. If you haven't been and you're waiting, then I would say, it might be a good idea to just not get on the plane because you don't know if standby is going to work out, and you take a practice test tomorrow and you get ready for the March test. It's an impossible situation though, and I really feel for you guys. That's not the best. It's just not the best solution. I wish I had a better answer than that. It's not the best solution, but these times are so crazy, and I really do feel for all of you. The hard work that you guys are putting in, despite these crazy times that no other students have ever had to deal with. I certainly didn't have to. I've already told you that I was really lazy. If I was in this mode with the internet at my disposal, taking virtual classes or getting tests canceled, I would have checked out long ago. And the fact that you guys haven't done that is a testament to your work ethic, your hard work, and you guys just got to keep that up. But there is no good answer right now, and I wish there was. I wish I had something better than that, but there's not. The only thing I can say is stay positive. Keep that positive energy coming, and it will pay off. That hard work will pay off. You will be able to take the test. If you're a junior especially, you'll still have opportunities to take the test before you have to submit your college applications. And again, I wish there was a better answer than that. All right, guys, so again, what I want you to think about is positivity. So tomorrow before the test, what I would recommend to everybody do, my recommendation in terms of taking the exam, let me see. Is I would okay, for warm-up, guys, I would do one of 2 things. Warm-up tomorrow. This is the list of all SAT released exams. Tomorrow before the test, before you head to the test center, wake up 10-15 minutes early and do one of 2 things. I would encourage everybody. Yeah, section 5, if you guys get the experimental section, it does not count. Even if they tell you it does, every indication from everything we've ever read says that it does not count. You can take that for what it's worth. Maybe it does, but even though the section 5, guys, the experimental section, if you get one, it's only like 25% of students will receive a 5th section, and I don't think any international students will receive it. So if you're international, don't worry, but it does not count. Yeah. It won't count, and even if they tell you it does, they're just trying to get you to be focused for that one because those are the questions that they're going to give students in like 3 years. It's that they're seeing if those questions are good questions to ask for future tests. So even if they tell you that it does, it's only because they want you to take it seriously so that they can get a good understanding of how students respond to those. Good question there, though. Okay, so again, the last thing that I would say is for warm-up tomorrow morning, wake up a little early. I would focus on doing one writing and language passage before you get up. I just posted the link to all released SAT exams. Okay? Okay, yeah, it's not going to count, guys. So if you get whatever section you get, again, don't worry. If you get the experimental section, do not worry. It won't count. Even if they tell you, even if the proctor tells you it does, it will not. So just don't worry about that section. It's a good question to bring up, though, just in case anybody hasn't seen that yet. Okay, again, final thing. Make sure that you guys do a warm-up passage. So I just posted all released exams. Even really if you've done the passage before, that's not really a concern. It's really just to get you in the mindset of, in some ways, taking a passage that you've already done well on and that you've already seen before is good because it gives you that positive momentum, right? You're still thinking, you're still looking at a writing and language test. You still have to remember why something is the way that it is, but you don't have to stress about it. So I'd take one writing and language passage before tomorrow. Omitted questions, guys, count as a missed question. So make sure your entire bubble sheet is filled out. You don't get any penalties for guessing. So if you leave a question blank, it's just a missed question. Okay, guys, do a practice passage in the morning. That writing and language practice passage. Okay, that writing and language practice passage will allow you to get ready for the reading test too, because you'll read kind of while you're doing the writing and language. Yet it won't be nearly as hard of a passage as the reading passages are. So it'll give you a sense. It'll give you a little bit of warm up. And then my recommendation is if you have the app, the nice thing about having the Star U app is that you can do these on your phone. If you open the app, which you're seeing on my screen right now, and you're doing practice questions on your phone while you're standing in line registering for the test, right? You get in this long line, you walk up, you show them your ID, you show them your ticket, you go in and you take the test at a location. My recommendation would be doing practice questions on your phone or doing a little bit of review, reading a little bit about punctuation, doing 1 or 2 math questions right on your phone or just looking at those questions. So you're in the right mindset as you get ready for the exam tomorrow. Okay, as you're there tomorrow, rather than psyching yourself out by talking with somebody and saying that person telling you that they're going to fail it, that just gives you that negative energy that you don't want. It's a 4-hour test. It's already going to be stressful as it is. So don't make it more stressful by talking to somebody that's giving you, all the reason in the world to stress out about it. Okay? Question about guys, for the English, if you guys are looking for an English review, we did a short English review last night on the comprehensive review. This is review live stream. Okay, this link, somewhere around the 1 hour mark, we start talking about writing and language, and then we do an English review. The most important rules to remember on the writing and language test. So I encourage you guys to check out that video, that comprehensive review, if you're looking for additional English help before tomorrow. Okay, guys? So again, we're warming up, right? We're getting everything ready to go that we need to get ready tonight so that we have those 5 items, those essential items ready, and they're just in a pile, and we just walk out the door with them. We're getting to bed at the relatively same time, maybe an hour before we typically do when we get ready for school. Maybe a few hours before if you're the type that stays up really late. That's another thing, right? That's a different issue. Okay? And I'm thinking about what else. Oh, and then when you wake up tomorrow, do a practice writing language passage, that would be my ideal warm-up for you. It gets you ready for the reading test, right? It kind of secondarily gets you ready for the reading test, and then it's definitely getting you ready for the writing and language test. And you can knock that test out, right? And then be doing practice problems on your phone on the app on Star U. When you get to the testing location, we'll send a notification to remind you guys of this, but so that you're not right, so that you're not distracted by listening to somebody talk about how badly they're going to do on the test. Instead, you're doing practice problems. You're still thinking about the exam that you're about to take, and so that nervous energy starts to get out of your system before you actually take the exam. Yeah, guys, best way to get a high score on the math section. Yeah, like specific very specific concepts, like the one that Mystical just posted, that can be a good one. Focusing on specific concepts. For tomorrow, we talk a lot about in that same comprehensive review that I just posted, we talk a lot about how you can improve your math score overnight. There's not a ton of time to focus on the math section between now and tomorrow, but if you have more time, that's when you should do those harder concept reviews, right? And think about those different harder concepts. If it's between now and tomorrow, check out that comprehensive review at the end of the review, at the end of that recorded lesson. We talk about the math section and how you can quickly improve your score. But that might not get you those hard concepts at the very end of the test. That might take a little bit more time to review. Okay, guys? Any final questions here? We have about 2 more minutes. I'll answer 1 or 2 more questions, and then you guys are out of here. You'll get ready to go for the test. And we will see you guys hopefully for the next review come March. We'll be doing more live streams too, guys. We'll be doing more live streams. We'll be doing more videos, real-time videos. If you guys have checked out me or one of our other tutors, or we even have a student that's done one of those practice exam sections in real time, so the clock is running. So the stress is there. We want you guys to see that it's stressful. Even if you do this every day for a living, it's still stressful. Right? Don't let somebody kid you otherwise. Recognize that it's stressful. Realize that that's a thing that you're going to have to deal with, and then own it, right? There's empowerment in that. Instead of being nervous about it, just realize, hey, this is stressful for everybody. So what am I going to do to be less stressed than the person sitting next to me? Because then I've won. I've won the battle, right? Then I know I'm a leg up on everybody else. All right, guys. The final thing is we really, really appreciate all the support that you guys continue to show us. If you guys can spread the word, we want to do more of these live streams. We want to be doing these YouTube videos, pretty much full time, trying to come out with a couple of these a week. But right now we can't do that. We're focused on other things, on other tasks. But if you guys tell your friends, if you guys spread the word, if you haven't subscribed yet, please click subscribe below. And if you tell your friends, when we get to a certain level, we're just going to be a certain level of subscriptions and people watching these things, we're going to be able to do a lot. I have too much content. I probably annoy people talking about the SAT too much, ACT too much, but I have a lot more content that we can continue to produce for you guys, and we want to be able to do that. It's just a timing thing right now. So please subscribe if you haven't. Spread the word for us, and otherwise, guys, I hope you have a great rest of your day. Hope you have a great rest of your night or weekend or whatever, and you guys are going to crush it on the test tomorrow. Just know you are. If you go in with a positive mindset that you're looking for questions that you know how to answer, you're keeping it easy, you're keeping it simple, there's no way that you do badly tomorrow. There's just no way. Right? You're answering the easiest questions for a reason, and they're still worth the same amount of points as the hard ones. All right, guys, have a great rest of your night. Like I said, you guys are going to crush it. Otherwise, good luck on your test, and we'll see you guys for the next live stream or the next video. Comment below, guys. Comment below if you have any questions after this video that we didn't get a chance to answer, and one of our teachers or tutors either tonight or tomorrow morning will answer those for you. Awesome, guys. Have a great rest of the time, and good luck tomorrow.